I am back from vacation, everyone, after the family and I took a wonderful trip up there into Alaska for the last 2 weeks. And man, we got to experience the midnight sun and some of those refreshing 50 and 60-degree temperatures. But back home, there's been a lot happening over the last 7 days. I've been updating on Facebook while I have been away. But nonetheless, look at the precipitation over the last 7 days. And with all that devastating flooding down there into the hill country that left almost 2 feet of heavy rainfall and the devastating flooding that unfortunately cost 104 lives, even more severe than Hurricane Harvey, if you can believe that. And then there was a system that came across the southeast coast, a developing tropical type feature that rained a lot into the state of Florida, but then it got its act together and formed into Tropical Storm Chantal and dumped the heavier rain into North Carolina that also saw 8 to 12 inches. But overall, look at much of the country. This is a rainfall map for the first week of July. It looks to be almost May, and this is a lot of rainfall considering it's going into one of the drier months of the year. And I think it actually continues to remain above average for a good part of the country. Overall, if we look at the big picture on the satellite view, as far as the tropics go out into the main development region, it's been quiet. I think it continues to remain quiet with all the Saharan dust that's coming off of Africa and all the cooler waters out there into the main development region. But it's the closer the home activity. The Pacific has been very active with these systems coming across. That's led to abundance amount of monsoonal moisture that's also been fed back into some of the the remnants of what was Barry that left all the devastating flooding up down there in Texas. And of course, we have had all those in-close development systems that's formed right off the coastline and then made landfall. And out here, we've got northwest flow. That's actually kind of a cooler flow and somewhat fairly rare. You see that in the month of June, not July, but out west, that's where the high pressure is. Much of the desert Southwest, much of the West Coast, much of the Pacific Northwest is under that ridge of high pressure and all the heat and the well above average temperatures. But if we look at the overall precipitation, as far as the moisture content, whenever you get into the month of July, the jet stream lifts well to the north. So anything that gets trapped underneath gets locked into some of those lower steering currents, and if anything can get going, it can produce some abundance of heavier amounts of rain in a short amount of time. So if you look further south, even today we have this little tut low that's in the Gulf that will spread some tropical moisture inland across a good part of the southeastern portions of Texas, northeast Texas, getting into Arkansas, and then we also have a feature along the eastern seaboard that will leave them with some heavier rains and even some severe storms as we head into the late afternoon into the evening time frame. But overall, if you look at the big picture, we still have a marginal risk. If anything kind of bubbling up, it will produce some isolated heavier rains, unfortunately, back into the hill country again, portions of North Texas, but especially where we have those 2-inch per hour rainfall rates potential, we could see some heavier rain amounts into northeast Texas as well as into Arkansas. And then, of course, the standout is across the eastern seaboard, where we could also see definitely some heavier rains and some stronger wind gusts, mainly a wind producers for these cells that will form later on this afternoon into the evening time frame across the eastern seaboard. Expect definitely some heavier rains and some isolated flash flooding concerns. But overall, as far as the temperature front, of course, where the ridge of high pressure is and much of the high, you get all that sinking air, so you get all the elevated temperatures, well above average temperature anomalies, and of course all the drier than normal conditions. But it's the northwest flow and the clouds and the rain around that will keep the cooler than average temperatures across a good part of the southern plains that includes much of Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas, Louisiana, a good part of Tennessee, as well as into Kentucky. It's the above average temperatures across the eastern seaboard, and then of course well up into Canada as well. So, but overall, as we swing into Wednesday, it really doesn't change for as far as dynamics are concerned. That from today into tomorrow, the same similar type of dynamics. We've got the northwest flow pressing in from the northwest to southeast movement, and then we have the Tut low that will be spreading more precipitation down there into portions of Texas that will swing across along that northwest flow, and then of course the heavier rains will inundate areas of the Carolinas again, a good part of Virginia, as well as into New Jersey, Delaware. Those areas across the eastern seaboard will get more heavy rainfall into that daytime on Wednesday. So if we break it down between now and Thursday, it kind of looks like this, with much of the country out west will remain high and dry under that ridge of high pressure. It's not really until you get to the central part of the U.S. well, you've got the northwest flow. You've got the complements of the tropical type moisture from that tut low that will move inland, that will just spread added rain showers for a good part of the South, much of Louisiana, and then of course the heavier rains will be inundated along the East Coast between now and Thursday afternoon. So if you break it down on the temperature front, even heading into Friday, we have another system that will be swinging across the middle of the country. Fairly unusual for, as we head into, July, of course, the middle part of the July, you're getting into that peak time of summer. So it's definitely unusual to see below average temperatures for a good part of the central and then southern plains. And that's just complements of that northwest flow and the abundance amount of precipitation that's still feeding down there from the tropics, that will feed and keep that cloud cover around, keep the rain shower probabilities around, and that will keep the temperatures cooler. So it's really the outskirts of the country, the western parts of the U.S. and the northeastern parts of the U.S. that will see more summer-like type temperatures, at least above average temperatures for the remainder of the week. But as we head into Friday, look at the jet stream, right? So it's well to the north. It's basically up there in Canada. So that's what I'm saying. Anything that gets trapped underneath as far as precipitation, it gets trapped in lower steering currents, and it can produce some heavier rains that will lead to some isolated flash flooding. But also we have that new system, another system that will be coming in with a little bit of a dip. And that dip is all it takes that will bring cooler temperatures and the revived northwest flow back in the picture for the weekend. And that will also bring renewed storm chances and rain chances as well, as this will open up the Gulf again. Look at the flow that comes out of the Gulf there, spreading its precipitation and the moisture content all the way to the Canadian border. And that will link up with that northwest flow setup. And you get this kind of axis that will transfer around this boundary that will be setting the stage for more opportunities for showers and thunderstorms as you kind of heat up the atmosphere in the heat of the day, and then they kind of tend to die down as we head towards sundown. But as we head into that Saturday time frame, you can see where the vorticities are. We've got the system that will be coming across that's diving into the Dakotas on Friday. We'll link up with another system through Minnesota and Wisconsin during the day on Saturday. And then we have the southern branch of the jet stream that will also be active, complements of that northwest flow that will bring more rain showers for a good part of Kansas, back into Oklahoma again, back into Texas. They'll see additional opportunities for added rain showers, and that's what we see on the surface map on Saturday. I mean, more isolated showers in the heat of the afternoon across these boundaries with the complements of the northwest flow, the precipitation that's coming out of the Gulf that will link up to all these pieces of energy with higher dew points, higher humidity values, and of course it will feel extremely muggy. But as far as the temperature front, we'll keep it more or less average, or at least slightly below average of what you typically see for that middle part of July. And the same thing that happens on Sunday. So you got a kind of a wetter weekend ahead, if you will. It's not going to be a washout or anything like that, but you are going to be seeing, say, 30 to 40% showers, and with those low steering currents, you can get some afternoon downpours for, say, as these storms really won't have any steering mechanisms to move them out any quickly in a short. So they'll be dumping a good amount of rain in a short amount of time, and then be done as they kind of move out. But I don't think it's really until Monday, as we head towards that middle part of July, we take on a little bit of that zonal flow back in the picture. We start to see more ridging start to, expand out from the desert Southwest and start to expand into the middle of the country. So we might be looking at a little bit more of a drying trend as we head into next week. But overall, between now and then, it's going to feel a lot like summer out west, well above average temperatures. The heat is on for the desert Southwest, a good part of the West Coast, much of the Pacific Northwest. Overall, a good part of southern Canada there, and into the Northeast. It's just really underneath where they see that, abundance amount of precipitation, higher moisture content, increased rain shower opportunities. Obviously, with the extra cloud cover this time of year, that will keep the temperatures more on the tamer, milder average, even slightly below average side for the week ahead. And overall, on the precipitation front, yes, where the high pressure is, where the ridge of high pressure is dominating, that's where you've got all the sinking air. That's where you see less opportunities for rain showers, little to none, if that, and then more opportunities across the middle of the part of the country with the northwest flow and the moisture returns out of the tropics. That will keep the rain showers alive really between now and to the weekend ahead across a good part of the central and southern plains, much of the southeast, and along the east coast, of course, into the Carolinas and much of Virginia. And along the east coast, we'll see above average rainfall. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.